You're living in a prison, and the worst part is, you built it yourself. Not with bricks or bars, but with every decision you made to be acceptable rather than authentic. Every time you chose safety over truth, comfort over growth, belonging over becoming. Carl Jung discovered the most devastating fact about human existence. We voluntarily enslave ourselves, then spend our lives wondering why we feel trapped. The prison Jung identified isn't external. It's the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. Every morning, you wake up and put on a costume called your persona, play a character called your false self, and perform in a show called your life. You've done it so long, you've forgotten you're acting. But your psyche hasn't forgotten. It screams at you through anxiety, depression, addiction, and a crushing sense that something essential is missing. Jung understood that freedom isn't about changing your circumstances. You could have unlimited money, perfect relationships, total autonomy over your time, and still be enslaved. Because real freedom is psychological. It's the ability to be who you actually are without apology, modification, or performance. And that's exactly what terrifies you most. Here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. You're not one person, you're a crowd. Inside, you exist what he called a complex. Multiple subpersonalities, each with their own agenda. The pleaser who needs approval. The rebel who needs to destroy. The child who needs safety. The tyrant who needs control. You think you're making decisions, but really, different parts of you are taking turns driving while you watch from the passenger seat. The first prison is identification with these complexes. You think you are your anxiety, your depression, your addiction. But Jung realized these are autonomous complexes that have colonized your psyche. They're not you. They're psychological parasites feeding on your unconsciousness. The anxious complex needs danger to exist, so it creates it. The depressive complex needs hopelessness, so it finds it. You're not anxious or depressed. You're possessed by complexes that need you to stay that way. I watched this with a client who identified as an anxious person. For 30 years, anxiety was her identity. Then, through Jungian analysis, she discovered anxiety was a complex that formed when she was 5, when expressing her real feelings got her punished. The complex's job was to keep her safe by keeping her small, worried, constantly scanning for danger. Once she saw it as separate from her true self, she could negotiate with it rather than be ruled by it. The second prison is what Jung called the shadow. Everything about yourself you've rejected. But here's the twist. You haven't actually gotten rid of these qualities. They've gone underground, into the unconscious, where they run your life without your permission. Your disowned anger becomes passive aggression. Your rejected sexuality becomes compulsion. Your denied selfishness becomes resentment. You're controlled by the very things you're trying not to be. The shadow makes you unfree in the most insidious way. It makes you reactive. Someone displays a quality you've disowned, and you're triggered beyond reason. You hate in others what you refuse to see in yourself. You're attracted to people who embody your shadow qualities. You're repelled by those who mirror your rejected aspects. You think you're choosing, but you're just ping-ponging between attraction and repulsion to your own unconscious material. Jung discovered that projection is the mechanism that keeps you imprisoned. You don't see the world as it is. You see it as you are. Every person you meet is wearing a mask you've placed on them, made from your own unconscious material. The person you're obsessed with isn't carrying your happiness. They're carrying your projection of wholeness. The person you despise isn't your enemy. They're wearing your shadow. You're living in a hall of mirrors, fighting or loving your own reflections. The third prison is the collective unconscious. The inherited patterns Jung called archetypes that live through you. The mother, the father, the hero, the victim, the sage, the fool. These aren't just ideas. They're living psychological forces that possess you. You think you're choosing to be nurturing, but the mother archetype is living through you. You think you're being rational, but the sage has taken over. You're not living your life. You're being lived by patterns millions of years old. I knew a man who couldn't understand why he kept recreating the same relationship dynamic. Always the hero, always rescuing, always exhausted. He thought he was choosing damaged partners. Jung would say the hero archetype was choosing through him, needing dragons to slay, damsels to save, battles to fight. Until he became conscious of this archetypal possession, he wasn't free to have an actual relationship with an actual person. The fourth prison is your unlived life. Every choice you make murders infinite other possibilities. The career you chose killed all other careers. The person you married eliminated all other partners. The life you're living is built on the graveyard of lives you didn't live. And those unlived lives don't disappear. They haunt you. Jung discovered that your unlived life accumulates in the unconscious, creating pressure, symptoms, crises. The midlife crisis isn't about age. It's about the unlived life demanding to be lived before it's too late. The affair isn't about sex. It's the unlived lover demanding expression. The career change isn't about money. It's the unlived calling finally breaking through. Here's the devastating truth Jung uncovered. Most people would rather stay imprisoned than face what freedom requires. Because freedom means taking responsibility for everything. Your shadows, your projections, your complexes, your unlived lives. It means admitting that you're the author of your own suffering. It means giving up the comfort of blaming others, circumstances, fate. It means standing naked before your own existence with no one else to point to. The process Jung called individuation, becoming who you truly are, is the only path to freedom. But it requires what most people won't do. Conscious suffering. Not the unconscious suffering of staying stuck, but the conscious suffering of transformation. The pain of withdrawing projections and seeing yourself clearly. The grief of letting your false self die. The terror of not knowing who you'll be on the other side. Freedom requires meeting what Jung called the self. Not the ego self you think you are, but the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious. The self includes everything. Your light and shadow, your masculine and feminine, your personal and collective unconscious. Meeting the self is terrifying because it's so much larger than who you thought you were. It's like a wave discovering it's the ocean. But here's what Jung knew that most people die without learning. Until you meet the self, you're being lived by it unconsciously. The self is driving your life from the unconscious, creating synchronicities, symptoms, and situations to force you toward wholeness. Your anxiety might be the self trying to break you out of a too small life. Your depression might be the self demanding you let something die. Your addiction might be the self's misguided attempt to transcend ego limitations. The synchronicities Jung identified, meaningful coincidences, are the self's way of communicating with you. That book that falls off the shelf. That person who appears at exactly the right moment. That dream that answers your question. These aren't random. They're the self orchestrating your liberation. But if you're unconscious, you miss the messages, resist the invitations, fight the very thing trying to free you. Here's what's really going to disturb you. You're already free. Right now, in this moment, you have everything you need to be yourself fully. The prison door is unlocked. It's always been unlocked. You're staying inside because the prison is familiar, and freedom is terrifying. You know how to be enslaved. You don't know how to be free. Jung discovered that people will do almost anything to avoid real freedom. They'll seek financial freedom while staying psychologically enslaved. They'll fight for political freedom while remaining prisoners of their own unconscious. They'll leave relationships, jobs, countries, seeking external freedom, never realizing they're carrying their prison with them. Real freedom, Jung understood, is the ability to choose your response regardless of circumstances. Viktor Frankl, influenced by Jung, discovered this in concentration camps. That even in the worst external prison, psychological freedom is possible. Conversely, you can have every external freedom and be totally enslaved by your own unconscious patterns. The moment of liberation comes when you realize what Jung realized. You are not your thoughts, your feelings, your patterns, your story. You're the consciousness that can observe all of these. You're not the complexes. You're the awareness that can see them. You're not the shadow. You're the light that can illuminate it. You're not the persona. You're the one who can take the mask off. This is the knowledge that sets you free. You're playing a character in a story you wrote, directed, and produced. You cast yourself as the victim, the hero, the martyr, whatever role you're playing. But you're not actually any of these roles. You're the consciousness that can play them all or none. The freedom Jung points to isn't freedom from suffering. It's freedom within suffering. It's not freedom from limitation. It's freedom to choose your limitations consciously. It's not freedom from death. It's freedom to live fully knowing you'll die. Most people think freedom means having more options. Jung knew it meant needing fewer. The free person doesn't need others' approval because they approve of themselves. They don't need external validation because they're internally valid. They don't need to be understood because they understand themselves. But here's the paradox. This freedom that requires needing nothing from others makes genuine relationship possible for the first time. When you're not projecting onto others, you can actually see them. When you're not needing them to complete you, you can actually love them. When you're not using them to avoid yourself, you can actually meet them. The same with life itself. When you stop needing life to be different, you're free to engage with what is. When you stop demanding that reality match your expectations, you're free to meet reality as it is. When you stop fighting what Jung called amor fati, love of fate, you're free to dance with destiny rather than fight it. Jung's ultimate insight was that freedom isn't something you achieve. It's something you stop preventing. You don't become free. You stop choosing slavery. You don't find yourself. You stop losing yourself. You don't gain consciousness. You stop choosing unconsciousness. Every moment, you're choosing prison or freedom. Every time you say what you think others want to hear instead of your truth, you choose prison. Every time you betray yourself for approval, you forge another bar. Every time you project your power onto others, you hand them the keys to your cell. But also, every moment offers liberation. Every time you speak your truth, despite the consequences, you choose freedom. Every time you honor your authentic self over your persona, you unlock another door. Every time you withdraw a projection and own what's yours, you reclaim your power. Jung's message is both terrible and wonderful. You'll never be free until you know that you're the only one who can free yourself. No one else has the keys to your prison because you're the one who locked it. No one else can liberate you because you're the one keeping yourself enslaved. The knowledge that frees you is this: you are not who you think you are. You're not your story, your patterns, your wounds, your achievements. You're not your thoughts, your feelings, your body, your roles. You're the consciousness that experiences all of these, but is identified with none of them. You're the dreamer, not the dream. You're the ocean, not the wave. You're the sky, not the weather. And when you know this, really know it, not intellectually but in your bones, you're free. Free to be everything or nothing. Free to play any role or no role. Free to suffer without being suffering. Free to die without being death. This is Jung's invitation. Stop waiting for freedom and realize you're already free. Stop seeking yourself and realize you've never been lost. Stop trying to become and realize you already are. The prison was always imaginary. The chains were always your own hands gripping too tightly. The lock was always your own fear of what lies beyond the cage. Let go. Open your hands. Walk out of the prison of who you think you have to be, and into the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of who you actually are. That's the knowledge that frees you. You've always been free. You just forgot while you were busy building your cage.